We had already talked about the new rules regarding property ownership in the video on selflessness. All we possess, we have to administer as trustees in the name and on behalf of hierarchy, and to selflessly use it for the service to the common good and the progress of evolution. It is in accordance with the nature of man to live in small communities with equally minded friends. The lifestyle of the big cities is, in truth, unsuitable for him. Their poisoned atmosphere, in which men squeezed together by millions mutually intensify their lower aspirations, is unbearable for a spiritual disciple. A disciple who has reached a certain degree of spiritual development is unable to remain too long in the polluted atmosphere of the cities, and is obliged to retire into nature in order to accumulate prana and lead a more or less retired life. Christ, Buddha, and other great teachers often used to retire to the desert and never stayed long in one place. It is not healthy for the king of the earth to leave large parts of the planet uninhabited and to crowd together in a few centers under unworthy conditions. Your judgment is correct in regard to the need for an exodus from the festering cities and for a proportionate distribution of the population of the planet. If humanity is fundamentally a fire bearer, is it possible not to understand how very necessary is the wise distribution of this element? It must be understood that the illness of the planet depends to a great extent upon human balance. One should not abandon vast spaces and gather in fratricidal congestion on infected and blood-soaked sites. Humans must spread evenly over the earth and live as much as possible in nature. Multitudes will have to spread out from the cities into nature. There are many cases of city dwellers who take jobs as farm laborers to escape the sickening environment of the big cities. This is a praiseworthy decision if one knows how to avoid crowds in the new environment. Life in the countryside will become attractive again. Today's technical possibilities no longer require living in big cities. Life in nature must be arranged attractively and considered self-evident. The new inventions permit the use of cultural achievements even in far-off places. When the schools show the meaning of life in self-improvement, people will also increasingly seek a life in the open nature. For the spiritual man, the village is the appropriate way of life. Here they live simply in harmony with nature and environmentally friendly. Here, they produce what they need, more or less themselves, and also govern themselves on their own to a large extent. As long as man continues to pile structure upon structure and crowd countless numbers of people in a small area, the world must suffer. But if right methods prevailed, there would be no occasion for crowding into cities. If we would follow the advice of the masters, go back to the land, live in normal, natural ways, construct our business centers aright, nature would work with and for us instead of against us. The village is a manageable community in which can best be realized the basic principle: everyone contributes according to his possibilities as much as possible to the wealth of the community, and claims from the goods owned by all as little as possible, according to his needs. The personal relationship existing between the members allows to assume immediate responsibility for the neighbor, to care for the needy, especially the youngest and the elders, in a natural way. It grants every man his proper and dignified place. It avoids the basically inhuman, gigantic systems of social security, big business, industry, and mass consumption. The village can become a new form of monastery, a modern spiritual center. Like-minded spirits live together with their families according to fixed rules and devote themselves to contemplation, education, and service, while preserving their individuality and privacy. When the time comes that you can obtain a large enough acreage of ground, create a true home center in the midst of that land, and gather around that center a sufficient number of young people who can be rightly educated in every sense of the word. You will have done more for the world by far than the most notable college that the world contains has ever done. A cooperative farm, where a definite number of the hours of each day shall be devoted to study, practical work, and recreation, where intelligence and skill can combine with mere physical energy, and where all the healthy, life-giving exercises can be turned into hours of recreation. Where there can be turned out the most practical horticulturists, agriculturists, fruiterers, and foresters, those upon whom the world, then as now, will depend for all that makes life worth living in an esoteric sense. Here is a work outlined for true Templars, a work for which millions yet unborn may sometime arise to call them blessed. If many of these thousands of college-bred failures had been kept in their country homes and had been taught farming as a science, they would be today among the army of happy, contented producers instead of the indolent, useless consumers of the food, clothing, and shelter that other and better men have produced. Hundreds of thousands of acres of land are lying today uncultivated because there are no men at hand to cultivate them, and the cities are crowded to suffocation with this unproductive element. A completely new spirit must enter science. Science should selflessly serve the common good and seek nothing but the truth. To unearth new, higher knowledge is a sacred act. The new age needs researchers of a new kind. Today's scientist is vainly and selfishly striving to push his personal achievement to the foreground at all costs. Will it not be much more fruitful to work towards the truth in collaboration with others? The commandments of the fundamentals will give an invincible enthusiasm to the scholar who, freed of egoism, with honesty continues his researches for the benefit of humanity. Scientific opinions in the interest of a sponsor endanger the independence and exclusive obligation of the researcher to truth. The new order must make sure that the sciences are run by persons who do not succumb to such dangers. We are not against laboratories and Western methods, but we ask that honesty, efficiency, and the courage of impartiality be added to them. In the new world, the character, the reliability of a scientist will be even more important than his professional competence. The community entrusts him with decisions of the utmost importance. Let us think of nuclear energy or genetic engineering only. It has a right that its questions be answered by persons whose integrity and sole obligation towards truth are beyond any doubt. The difficulty now being faced is that many of the people gathering ostensibly in the name of science are undeserving of trust. A hierarchy of the best scientists must be in a position to come to a unanimous recommendation to the community, even on a difficult question, if and when all persons concerned work together and look for nothing but the truth. Only on such a decision can the community rely. The new divine science, of which we had already spoken, requires a synthesis of religious and intellectual knowledge. Accordingly, the scholars of the new world must have spiritual abilities as well. Religion and science must not be considered separate in their essential nature. Therefore, it is so important that scholars should be in possession of subtle occult receptivity. But only a refined organism can possess this divine perception, which is not developed from without, but from within. Therefore, all the great discoveries for the good of humanity will not emanate from enormous laboratories, but will be discovered by the spirit of scholars who are in possession of the synthesis. Agriculture is the only one of the institutions of society for which there already exists a living model of the new order. Organic agriculture shows how we can practice our profession on an ethical basis and in the service to the common good. Here, the old irresponsible abuse of nature is overcome. According to this example, we must offer in our professions ethically pure services for all the needs of body and soul of our fellow human beings. This is possible and necessary even in the cities. Truth is the foundation of every higher creation. Souls thirst for truth. He who imparts the truth to the people is like a priest who administers a divine good. The truth alone can work redemption for that world, and every willful deviation from the truth can but increase the weight of woe and defer the day of release, as every bravely uttered truth must decrease the load of sorrow and hasten that coming day. The spiritual degeneration of modern society is clearly visible in the role of the media. In addition to legislation, administration, and jurisprudence, they are assigned the important task of a fourth power in the state, a supervisory institution that monitors the government bodies, the functioning of social life, and keeps the power in check by its purely spiritual authority. The mission of the media is to serve the uncovering of the truth. Only selfhood impels the spirit to the suppressing of truth. Not to conceal, but to reveal is the most primary duty of the servant of light. Unfortunately, we are a long way from that. The spirit of egotism and profit-making has corrupted most of the media. They are aiming no longer at quality, but at sales or audience ratings. Produced is that what can be sold. Thereby the truth transpires, if at all, only accidentally. The columns of newspapers, in most cases, are at present filled with such calumny, coarseness, and vulgarity that there is even a joke. Although it was in the papers, it proved to be true. The printed word has lost its one-time unfailing authority and the high significance of bringing light to broad masses. There are not a few newspapers at present which are not disseminators of enlightenment, but, alas, hotbeds of all kinds of deception, to put it mildly. Overall, a distorted image of reality is shown. From the small to the great, humanity perverts all truths. The world is covered with the ulcers of human vices and monstrosities. One of the greatest ulcers is untruthfulness. Nothing, however, causes so much damage and works as destructively as a lie. Truth, like justice, is a system that is either strengthened or undermined by the daily thoughts, words, and actions of every one of us. This principle, too, asserts itself only when we human beings strive to realize it in our daily life on earth. Let people become accustomed to ejecting from their lives the multitude of petty lies and to learning to apply truth to life. Nothing is as destructive as a consciously injurious distortion of reality. If the majority of the people constantly deviate from the truth, it cannot rule down here, which will work in the end to the detriment of all of us. A social convenience, a business necessity, a pardonable evasion, so say ye one to another, to cover that which ye dare not face. A little oiling of the springs of life, a saving of self-respect, yet withal, say I, a lie. Most of that what is spread as information with a high pretension of importance is without any meaning for the higher nature of man. The dirt and garbage with which newspapers, magazines, radio and television daily flood our homes actually, in a spiritual sense, poison the atmosphere. Just imagine all these unclean waves which the stations send incessantly into space, and how they penetrate your homes and you yourself. With this regard, many media today are consciously or unconsciously tools of the forces of darkness. Modern mass media play a particularly harmful role in the spreading of that sweet spiritual poison, distraction. They lure people round the clock with their entertainment and temptations. In doing so, they prevent quiet contemplation, the concentration on the essential, the serious occupation with a valuable purpose, and the service to a high task. People substitute amusements for concentration, but was distraction ordained? Everywhere action was prescribed, but not the chaos of scattering and dissipation. They distract from the higher self and the true needs of man. They seduce you no longer to dream yourselves, but to consume the dreams of others. They pamper us in such a way that in the end we shy away from the hard work required to realize a dream. Free yourself Be creative yourself. The world that you find within your own interior, the world that you enter in meditation, the world which you create yourself, living as a disciple in the ashram of your teacher. This world is incomparably more beautiful and fruitful than the illusionary world of artificial emotions that others prepare for you and offer you ready for consumption. Dissatisfaction with the conditions in which we are compelled to live explains to some extent the willingness to indulge in such illusions. The better solution, however, is to develop your own ideas of a higher world and to implement them down here on earth.